Well, each year the Hunting Channel likes to try to take out friends and family from different states to go mule deer hunting here in Arizona, so they can experience what it is to do a Western hunt. And we have been talking about it for a while. I have been trying to get my good friend, two-time Super Bowl champ Justin Tuck out to come hunting with me.
3rd and 8. Nowhere to go. And Tuck will finish him off.
Just a 3-man rush, but nobody open, so Brady had to eat the ball.
You know, it's been tough with football season kind of coincides with hunting season, so we were never sure if, you know, if they were going to make playoffs or if they were going to go to the Super Bowl again. Well, finally this year we were able to make it happen, and Justin came to hunt with us.
Well, we just got to the airport. We're going to pick up my buddy Justin Tuck from the New York Giants, and we're going to go chase some mule deer. We're going to head out here in Phoenix this afternoon, and then tonight we're going to head down south and go meet up with Let It Rip Outfitters, my buddy Billy Babish, and the boys down there, and see if we can chase some Sonoran bucks around.
So you're probably wondering why we call this episode the Fawn and Distress Buck. Well, let's just say I got creative and I used some tactics that I only use when I'm hunting by myself to create opportunities. And this is the first time I tried it with multiple players involved. So stay tuned for the action. So the trip starts off with a snag. My plan was to grab Justin from the airport, run up to the house, take showers, get geared up, and go hunting up by me in Phoenix for that first afternoon. Head back to the house, grab a bite to eat, and then head down south to go meet up with the boys from Let It Rip Outfitters. And, well, it didn't go as planned.
Yeah, I mean, it's 1 o'clock now. Maybe we'll run up to the archery shop or something. I don't know, grab something to eat, chill out. Yeah, we're gonna definitely go eat right now. So. All right, baby. I'll talk to you later. Yeah, it's better than being lost. All right. Well, bye.
So I go and pick up Justin from the airport, and I'm helping him with his bags, and we realized that the airline loses his boat, and they're not going to be able to get it here for at least another 4 hours. It's coming in from New Jersey on another flight. So obviously that put a damper on my plans. You know, adapt and overcome, I always say. So basically we spent the rest of the afternoon poking around Bass Pro Shops and catching up over a game of pool. Now Justin's a damn hustler. He made me think that he was so-so at pool. He played back. Well, you know how the story goes. Guess who ended up paying for the bill? So we finally get the call that Justin's boat has arrived. We go to the airport, we scoop it up, we head back to my house, and after giving him the 2-second tour of my house, we decided to go outside and play with the Cogburn a little bit. So Justin's riding around like a little kid on the Cogburn, having a great time, when out of nowhere I realized that there's a bobcat sneaking up the wash. So we drop everything, we grab our gear, and we try to put a move on this bobcat. Well, Justin didn't want to make a bad shot and wound it and have a wounded animal jump in somebody's backyard and you know, it was probably for the best. He didn't have a perfect shot on him. It was 50 yards, and you know, we let him go, but it was nice to have a little bit of excitement after that whole ordeal with the baggage. Well, after a quick bite in the shower, we hit the road to meet up with pro staffer Bill Babish and the boys over at Let It Rip Outfitters. We got in late that night, just barely enough time to get about 3 hours of sleep before we had to get up the next morning and hit the mountain. Well, at first light, we decided to grab the bows, make a couple of quick shots to make sure the bows didn't get out of whack. Well, after a couple of quick shots, we hit a knob close to camp, and it wasn't long before we glassed up our first contestant of the day.
I don't know.
It is.
It is?
I just sort of tipped it in, but
He's darker than the other ones.
definitely bigger body.
Unfortunately, he was working away from us, so it really didn't work out to our advantage. Well, not long after, I spotted up another good group of deer with a really good buck in it. So we sent Justin down with Levi and Ricardo, and myself and Billy stayed up on top to give the guys direction behind the binos.
There he is.
Well, unfortunately, that ended as fast as it started. And by the time the guys made it back up to the hill, Billy and I had found another set of deer, and it was my turn to go for him.
Yeah, take the fence line down and it's going to come out. And I'll let you know when they come across this pond.
Well, we quickly devised a plan to get after these deer. Now, unfortunately, on the way down there, a group of doe moved in to our direct line of path.
There's 4 does with the eyes.
The best line to get to this buck, these doe were in the way. We had the good wind, and unfortunately, we had to get around these deer to get to the buck. Well, this took a lot of time, and by the time we got there, the buck had fed off with the does, and unfortunately, we ended up the morning muleys 2, dumb hunters 0. So we headed back to camp to grab some lunch and come up with a game plan for this afternoon.
We really had to take a truck over there. It almost floated away. Out of town about a half a mile. 4-wheel driving big mud tires. I don't know what they shot. That ain't breaking my beard, man. That's not good luck.
Well, unfortunately, that afternoon, we didn't find any deer until last light, and we could only get within 120 yards of them before we ran out of shooting light.
He's coming this way.
So that morning, pro staffer Bob Sears came down to join in on the action and help us get Justin a buck. Unfortunately, while we were waiting for him, other hunters slipped in and got on top of the 2 glassing points that we had been glassing from and had been seeing deer from. So we had to come up with a game plan on the fly and move to a different area.
That black one? That black hill right there?
I know it when I see it. I don't know.
How do I get there?
You gotta go there together. You gotta go down that power line road. The box over there?
No.
Okay.
Go there. We go this way.
Basically, Bob, you know what I'm talking about? Here's the rancher's house. Not that first one on the right-hand side, but across that canyon, that next point.
So go down to Lisa's Road.
You can do that too.
Let's go this way.
Unfortunately, our move didn't pan out for us. Aside from a few whitetail and some really cool petroglyphs, the morning was a bust.
There it is, there it is. Alright, it's going to the left. It's in the thicket again.
It's a small buck.
Oh, there's another one. There's a group. There's a group right there.
Where?
Right in that yellow strip. See that yellow strip? And then that dark bush? Right to the right of that the darkest bush behind that yellow strip. Justin, I need you to focus right now. Come on.
I see yellow strip. Yellow strip. With the rock top.
I know about that. I don't know what to tell you. Let's just be done ready.
Okay, there's another one.
Yep, I got it.
What him?
Alright, you see
It just ran. It just ran.
Yeah, they're chasing that one.
Yep.
Alright. Go park the pile of rock.
Yep.
From there. Closer to us or
Farther. See that yellow?
the last yellow strip?
Yep.
Before
The last yellow strip. There, so
Yep.
they're right in there. Now you see that dark bush.
Oh, yeah, he's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
So it was getting late and it was getting hot, and I felt like we needed to do something a little bit more proactive. So I got us into a bedding area that I had known to hold deer, and we slipped in probably within 100 yards of this bedding area, and I broke out the FX3 and I started doing the fawn in distress call. Within a minute, I started to see deer filtering through. And I had set us up in a manner that we had a little rise between us and them. And the game plan or the idea was that rise, they'd have to come over the rise to check out to see where the fawn was. Unfortunately, normally that works out really good, but it didn't work in this situation. They just kind of hung out on the other side of the rise about 70 yards back, and we really couldn't get a shot at them because we were lower than they were and we were sitting down on the ground. So antsy as I am and impatient as I am, I just decided, listen, I'm going to sneak up to the edge of this rise behind this bush and I'm going to see if I can get a shot off. Well, it actually worked out pretty good, but unfortunately my cameraman, Levi, didn't follow up with me, and he just stayed back and he couldn't see the deer. So I drew back down on this buck, and you know, he wasn't the greatest buck. He was a young deer. He was about 130 inches, a 3x, and I could tell we weren't going to get him on camera. So I just let him go. And at least it brought a little excitement to what otherwise would have been a pretty uneventful morning. So that evening, we hit the mountain, and it wasn't long before we found an awesome buck. We found a beautiful 190-inch buck, and Justin and Billy were up. So we sent them down. Bobby and I stayed back behind the binos to get them into position, and the rest was up to them. After a while, we kind of lost sight of the deer, and it was just the angle that we were at, and it was real flat, and we didn't really have a real height advantage. So I radioed down to Billy. I said, listen, we can't find a deer. I'm going to start looking for a deer in another area. So we started glassing in a different direction, hopefully to find another group, either for if they got busted early to get them on it, or to make a move ourselves. Sure enough, about 800 yards away from where Billy was at, I had spotted up a good 170 to 180 inch buck, and he was with like 10, 15 does. I radioed down to Billy to get the okay for us to go after him. Billy said he was on the other deer, they had him in sights, and to go for it.
We got him.
Tell him we go stop talking.
We got eyes on him. We got eyes on him. They're right here in front of us. He's a monster. We see him.
Well, we hit the hill running because we were running out of light, and I knew that we probably weren't going to get a chance to really put a spot and stalk on him. So I grabbed the FX and I said, Bobby, let's get down there. Let's try to get within 200 yards of this thing, and maybe we can call him to us. Well, it worked out perfectly. We slipped into a good position with a great natural funnel. The wind was perfect, but we were running out of light fast. I figured we were within 200 yards of him. I said, listen, Bobby, it's now or never. I set the call up, let it do its thing. And like this, they came running in. It was gonna go down. I could feel it in my guts. I was gonna get this deer. So they're coming towards us. I started filtering my way up through the trees to try to get a little bit more distance to get ahead of the call, so they had to come past me to it. I got into a great spot, good cover with decent shooting lanes. I had 3 good shooting lanes, and wouldn't you know it, the lead doe, boom, she stops behind the only mesquite tree in my shooting lane. And of course, the buck, he's in tow. He's right behind her. She moves again, she stops behind a bush, and he comes across. I draw back, I'm just about to shoot. He stops behind the same bush. Happened to me 3 times, drew back 3 times, and I couldn't get the shot off. Finally, they just fed around us and circled around us, try to get our wind for a little bit, and it just got too dark. My pins went dark, the camera couldn't see anymore, and that was that. While all this was going on, and I'm sitting here trying to put this move on this deer, Billy, Levi, and Justin have gotten into position to score this 190 buck.
I can't see him because of the tree. I don't want to move either. Now I mean, yeah, those other 2 toes have his band. Oh, I see him moving. Right there, in front of you. Oh, right there. You can see him. He's looking at us. He's going left again. Looks like he may be coming this way through the tree. Right now he's right on the other side of the tree from Justin.
And literally, Justin is seconds away from squeezing off the shot when I hit the call to call in my deer. Unfortunately, I pulled all the does from him to me also. So both herds came in. I thought that we were like 800 yards from him. I thought we were far enough away that those deer would not react to that call. Well, boy, was I wrong.
There he is.
I had screwed up the shot for Justin. So not only did I not get my deer, I screwed up my friend's shot too. Well, I felt like a complete jerk. I was just devastated, and it really was just, it ate at me. It ended up eating at me for the rest of the hunt.
All I did, he was walking his way.
Yep.
All I did was take 2 steps. He took 1 step, you did the call, he went. Oh!
I know.
I'm in 51 like this.
He had We had it. It's all on
He
film.
stopped behind his freaking tree at 47 yards. I drew back. And then the don't turn to kind of get the wind. And you were telling me to shut the call off. So I reached behind my pocket, I shut it. And when I shut the call off,
That was the difference. The one we had, they couldn't have got to you that quick.
yeah.
There was two groups.
I'm telling you, this one is the
Because you
biggest
guys,
bump.
listen, when you guys broke off from that other group,
We told you, we saw it.
and then it went up.
You didn't hear us say, we see him, shut up. That was the
You
biggest
said he
bump
was
we
out of the
seen
way.
on the footage. Where'd you see
I
the
gotta go
camera?
get this
Where'd you see the camera?
Okay.
Well, for the next few days, I was pretty much the camp clown, the camp jester. I was the brunt of everybody's jokes, and if you know me very well, you know you could beat the crap out of me, you could break bones, bruise me, whatever, and I brush it off. But if you mess with me, I am such a wuss. If you are making fun of me and stuff, I take that stuff hard. So I just kind of sucked into myself, and it took me a while to get out of that funk. Well, the next few days were more of the same. We kept finding great bucks, putting stalks on them, getting in real close, and just coming up short right at the end. It was really frustrating. And I could see Justin was getting frustrated because he so wanted a mule deer, and he doesn't get the opportunity to go for mule deer very often. And of course that was frustrating for us, and we really wanted him to experience that. And you know, it's just the way it goes. We had a lot of action, but we just couldn't get it done. So pretty much after the whole fiasco with calling Justin's deer away, I kind of gave up the idea of trying to get a buck myself. You know, I wanted to focus on getting Justin a deer, and you know, I live here, so I can always get one, and he only has the opportunity to come every once in a while. But me and Frank the Tank are the only two that have a javelina tag for this unit. Well, Billy and Justin were on another deer. And Frank and I had glassed up these javelina, and well, you know, we just couldn't let it slide. So him and I went down, we kind of split up. He circled to the right, I circled to the left of the herd. We had the wind in our favor, and we decided to get at him. Unfortunately, we only had one cameraman, and I took him with me, and Frank kind of went off on his own. But it kind of worked out great. So I knew these javelina were working their way towards this Fish and Game waterhole, and you know, I just hightailed it and got ahead of them and set up shop. And I thought they were going to come in from the front side of this waterhole, but they came in from the back side. So unfortunately, it was a little bit further of a shot. I was about 55, 60 yards. And I was just waiting for these javelina to come through. And finally, a pretty good size one started coming through, and I'm like, listen, I'm just gonna take the shot from here. And I drew back, and I didn't stop him, and I should have stopped him, especially at that yardage. I let it go. I hit him a little bit far back, and he ran off. We're sitting there just kind of waiting and seeing what was going to happen before we went to track him. I went and checked the arrow, and I could tell, you know, there was guts all over it, and there was little pieces of guts on the floor.
Well, I made a pretty shitty shot. There's a bunch of guts right here on the ground. Had him a little far back. My arrow's right over here. And we're gonna let this guy lay. Go looking for him.
Well, Frank had text messaged me, and he had got one too. So we went to meet up with Frank to go find his. Unfortunately, Frank didn't have the cameraman with him, and by the time we found Frank and his javelina, it was already dark, so we didn't film the recovery, but we did get this picture the next morning with a big fish-eating grin on his face about getting his first javelina. Well, the next morning I went to go track my javelina because I didn't look for him that night. And Billy and Justin were putting a stalk on yet another good buck. So they were after this buck, and of course, you know, the story of our lives on this trip, the bucks managed to get away from them. Well, I found my javelina, and you know, I was excited because it kind of gave me a little pickup and stuff like that. I got the javelina, and but it was starting to sink in that today was the last day, and we were only going to have this afternoon to hunt. Well, that afternoon, that evening, it was the last hunt we had on the strip, and Billy and I were glassing our butts off to try to find Justin this last minute buck, and we could not find a good deer. And it wasn't until about 30 minutes before last light where we found this deer, and I knew it was the same scenario as I had the other night. I said, listen, I know you guys have a bitter taste in your mouth about the FX, but let's just run down there, let's take it with us. If we can't get close enough, if we can only get within 200 yards or 120 yards, 130 yards, whatever, we can use it to call the deer in. Well, sure enough, we get there and we try to keep getting close, and they're feeding away. We only got within about 200 yards of them, and I'm like, listen, it's now or never. I set up the call. We had just crossed over this road about 50 yards into the brush, and I found like kind of a good funnel, set the call up, and sure enough, they come running in within seconds. And the buck's in tow and the lead doe, and she's coming right for the call.
What's that? Freaking truck.
And wouldn't you know it, at about 120 yards, they locked up. And I'm like, what's going on? All of a sudden, behind us goes this truck, 50 yards behind us on the road that we just crossed. And I was like, oh my God, how could this be? Are we the most unlucky people in the world? They just turned around and they walked off, and that was the end of that, and that went the end of our hunt. Unfortunately, Justin never got his deer, and I was getting ready to leave for Florida, so I wasn't going to have an opportunity to go back out myself. So it was pretty much the end of our January mule deer season, and it was bittersweet. I mean, we had a good time. You know, we had a lot of guys in camp. I mean, we had Randy, we had Frank, Bobby, Levi, Paul, Billy, Ricardo. I mean, just every day there was somebody filtering through, and it was a good time. And you know, at the end of the day, we really enjoyed ourselves, and I think Justin enjoyed himself. He said he had a great time and he couldn't wait to come back. So, you know, we did what we could, and we hope you enjoyed the show.
Well, it was an interesting weekend. We had a lot of ups and downs. A little more downs than ups, unfortunately. But, I mean, we've seen a lot of bucks that first couple days. Got a little greedy. A little bit. We could have went for the bird in the hand a couple of times, but I know we all won the big ones on it. Did you have a good time at least?
I had a great time. I'll be back. I already told you that. You know, just like you said, ups and downs. Got a lot of great stocks. Got close.
Yeah, you got really close to that 190 inch, the one that you really
we're not,
wanted.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about that one for sure.
I know, it's my fault, but
so yeah, we got the 51 on that big boy, and you know, after you see something like that, and you have a chance to harvest a bug like that, you really it's hard to go to reverse. So
I know.
But you know, everybody knows how great Arizona hunting and the mules out here, and you know, I saw big boys. I saw a lot of deer. You know, we had our shots and didn't get it happen, but you know, that's why it's called hunting. It's not called killing. So you know, it was a great experience, and I look forward to having an opportunity to do it again.
It's a good time in camp. It was fun.
Yeah, man, you was kind of the butt of the jokes.
I know, everybody was on me all weekend long.
Yeah, you was kind of.
The guy sets everything up. I get all the. I was the camp chef. I was the camp joker, and or jester, I should say. Everybody was
We
laughing
didn't
at
pick
me.
on you, we won't love you.
All right.
That's what I tell
I know.
This would be a
Justin.
pretty boring trip.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
You're the
That's what
man.
I brought Frank to do. I brought Frank here so we can pick on him, not you. Divert the attention away from me.
That's what I told Justin. I said, I usually do it, and he took over for me. So I don't have to do nothing.
Every time I go on there with Billy, he's that just constantly.
Finding camp for me is just, a secondary, football locker room. Being around the guys and get the opportunity to share our hunting stories and rag on each other. So that's what
Hopefully
it's
you
fun.
Hopefully you have a couple of more hunting stories to share with your other buddies this weekend. And so hopefully next year
And I did learn something. I didn't know you could call in deer on the predator farm. I didn't know that.
It works.
And you know
We're
what?
just-
As long as I've been doing it, it works.
I didn't
It worked at the wrong time, but it works.
Yeah.
I might have to incorporate that. in my
I
strategy.
didn't mean to call that buck away from you, but I thought I was far enough away, but apparently I wouldn't.
I'll tell you what, that's one thing. That's one Fox Pro worked.
Shout out to Fox.
Because it was,
Yeah.
they didn't waste no time. They were straight to that call. And yeah, screwed us up, but
Gave me an opportunity.
gave
but
him the opportunity,
Yeah,
but didn't mess us
I
up.
couldn't get that deer, man. About 5 more minutes of light.
And the only thing I say about that 190 incher that we didn't get is, hopefully see next year a little bigger.
Oh yeah.
That's the
Yeah,
good
'cause
thing
he was-
about the good thing about not harvesting that deer, or we saw some 180.
Yeah.
You saw a 200 incher probably on the road in the morning. So it's just hopefully they breed a lot this year.
Oh yeah.
They become a little
A
slower,
little bit bigger.
That
bigger, a
190,
little slower and dumber next year.
more than 4.5 years old.
Yeah, and that's one good thing about the.
If he survives till next year.
That's what's good about the rifle season too, is that they're not even here. They go somewhere and they'll be back.
They go lay down, they stand up, they move 5 feet over, they eat and they sit back down, they don't go anywhere.
Till January rut, and then they'll be back.
That's like that 180-inch one with the stickers.
Yeah.
That's why he's about 300 pounds, fat pig that he is. 'Cause
He jumped that fence like you said.
I mean, in the last couple of days, seriously. I mean, how many different bugs, big bugs, did we see that were moving in and out?
Today was the first morning we didn't see really any big ones.
But it's after the weekend too, so.
Yeah.
But we did have good days. We had one slow day, and that's what I was telling him. That's not bad.
Yeah.
One bad day.
Well, obviously
It's
they
not
hear-
easy.
I can't even keep track of all the bucks I've seen in the past 2 weeks. There's so many different ones.
Yeah, that's the other thing they filmed.
And even this morning, I mean, we didn't see the big bucks, but we saw.
You got an opportunity?
50 deer?
Oh yeah,
50 deer?
we did have opportunities this morning. But
Yeah, we did. So, just turn out.
Next year.
yeah, definitely next year.
All right, boys. Well, thanks for sharing camp with us. And
Yep, it was fun.
we're gonna hit the road, get this boy on a plane.
Get home. Peace
Peace.
out.
In case you were wondering, Justin Tuck does eat Subway.
That's my last bite, buddy.
Brought to you by Matthews Catches If You Can, Swagger Broadheads, True Fire Releases, Gold Tip Carbon Arrows, and these other fine sponsors.